Are we simply naked apes who learn to measure things, or does our inherent rage to learn point to a deeper purpose? Enjoy a bold new take on book coverage with this critique. Excellent for aspiring writers. If you find this expanded format valuable, we'd love to hear from you. Your feedback helps guide our future content.
And just as a quick heads up, you are experiencing a unique two-host AI conversation powered by Google's Notebook LM for deeper, more dynamic book analysis.
Right, so today we're doing an Essential Insights review of Charles Van Doren's A History of Knowledge. We're pulling out 3 transformative ideas about how human understanding evolved.
Specifically tailored for educators and lifelong learners. And Van Doren points out something fascinating right away. He argues that human history didn't actually start with, like, fire or stone tools.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it started with a fundamental shift in how we process information. We moved from particular to general knowledge.
Okay, so by particular you mean like an animal knowing, oh, this specific valley has water.
Exactly. Animals possess particular knowledge. But early humans started developing general knowledge, like understanding the concept of the water cycle, or that all living things eventually die.
So it's the monumental leap from recognizing a single data point to, grasping the underlying causality, the general rule.
Grasping the why is what allows you to predict and adapt.
Yeah.
It's the whole cognitive architecture that lets us build concepts.
But looking at how we approach learning today, you really have to wonder if we are drifting backward.
Oh, how so?
Well, honestly, look at modern standardized testing. We frequently drill students on memorizing isolated dates and vocabulary, which is purely particular knowledge.
That is a really sharp point.
Right. We test them on the raw data points rather than ensuring they understand the overarching historical causes and concepts.
Which brings up a vital reflection question for you listening. How can educators ensure they are cultivating universal understanding rather than just rewarding the recitation of isolated facts?
Because once early humans mastered those general concepts, the next challenge was figuring out how to organize and accelerate that learning.
Which fast forwards us to the 17th century. We didn't just stumble onto new facts during this era. We invented an entirely new machinery for acquiring them, the scientific method.
And specifically the method of measurement, right?
Yes, exactly. Before this, we described the world using qualities, like things were heavy, light, hot, or cold. The revolution was translating the natural world into numbers.
Translating nature into math. Actually, real quick, before we get into the double-edged sword of that control, take a quick pause to check out Mindful Moments, our YouTube channel offering AI book analysis, summaries, and critiques, inspiring reflection and rational thought.
Definitely check that out. But yeah, regarding that control, once you can measure atmospheric pressure mathematically, you aren't just passively observing nature anymore.
You can manipulate it.
Exactly. That is how measurement granted us unprecedented control over our environment.
But here is my pushback. Has our obsession with measurable science actually caused a regression?
A regression.
Yeah, think about the contrast with the Renaissance. They prioritized moral and humanistic knowledge, things like justice, morality, the good life.
Right, the things you can't measure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You cannot put a ruler on justice. You cannot weigh morality. Have we lost that profound wisdom simply because human values cannot be mathematically measured?
It is a profound trade-off. We dominate the physical world, but the ethical one remains elusive.
So here's another reflection question for you. Does your curriculum overvalue measurable data at the expense of profound, unquantifiable human wisdom?
It really forces you to ask if we're building an unstoppable scientific engine that assumes it will give us absolute objective certainty about everything.
But then the 20th century hits a brick wall.
A massive mathematical and physical wall. The whole idea of perfect objective certainty basically collapsed.
Right, because of Gödel and Heisenberg.
Precisely. Kurt Gödel proved mathematically that any complex logical system will contain true statements that simply cannot be proven within that system.
Math itself is inherently incomplete.
And Werner Heisenberg does the same for physics. He showed that at the quantum level, the very act of observing and measuring a particle alters its state.
Right, like you can know exactly where an electron is or exactly how fast it is moving, but never both at the same time.
Exactly. Our thumb is always on the scale when we measure the universe. The absolute bottom of reality is fuzzy.
Which sounds completely defeating, but here is what I love. Our knowledge is technically defective or incomplete. Yet we still use that incomplete physics to put Apollo 8 on the moon.
It is wild when you think about it.
It is like navigating a vast ocean with a slightly blurry map. You do not need perfect, absolute pixel resolution to successfully reach a monumental destination.
We just needed to be accurate enough. We had to let go of absolute certainty, yet we achieved greater goals than ever.
Which leads to our final reflection question. How do we teach students to act decisively and confidently in a modern world where absolute certainty is scientifically impossible?
It all comes back to how we harness our drive for knowledge.
Yes, and I want to leave you with one final thought from Van Doren on that. He observes that infants are born with an absolute rage to learn.
That inherent drive.
Right, but he controversially claims that television advertisers successfully exploit this by throwing rapid-fire, surprising facts at kids, while traditional educators often bore them with too little too late.
Ouch. So the question becomes, how do you reclaim that dynamic engagement?
How do we feed that inherent rage to learn and guide it toward genuine wisdom instead of just trivia?
That is definitely something to chew on.
For sure. For full guides and resources, visit the TPT Google site and Patreon links in the description, or use YouTube if you prefer captions, playback speed controls, or multilingual support. Keep questioning those blurry maps.